Venezuela, a country rich in resources, now caught in the turmoil of not just political conflict, but a battle for oil. Imagine this: up to 50 million barrels of oil, worth $2.8 billion, are on their way from Venezuela to the United States. But this isn't just any ordinary oil deal. It's the result of a military operation aimed at overthrowing President Nicolas Maduro, the man who has ruled amid crisis for years. With the announcement from US President Donald Trump, the oil will be sold at market price. But here's the catch: all the revenue will be controlled by him. So, what does this mean for the people of Venezuela? And what does the future hold for this valuable resource? This is not just a fight for oil. It's a fight for control. Stay with us as we explore the far-reaching consequences of this unprecedented oil transfer and how it could reshape the global energy landscape. To understand the significance of this move, we need to step back. Venezuela, once a symbol of oil wealth, now faces an uncertain future. The country's vast reserves, over 300 billion barrels, make it the largest proven oil reserve in the world. But for years, Venezuela's oil industry has been in decline. Mismanagement, corruption, and the collapse of state-run oil company PDVSA have decimated production. Now, the United States steps in, claiming control over the country's most valuable asset. But why oil? Why now? The answer lies in the heart of global energy politics. For the US, securing Venezuela's oil is about more than just access to resources. It's about stabilizing oil prices and gaining leverage over global energy markets. And for Venezuela, the question becomes, who truly benefits from the sale of this oil? The people who have suffered under a collapsing economy, or the international powers vying for control? To fully grasp the implications of Trump's move, we must look at the historical and economic forces at play. Venezuela's oil story begins decades ago, when the country's vast oil fields made it one of the world's richest nations. But that wealth didn't last. In 1976, Venezuela nationalized its oil industry, asserting control over its own resources. It seemed like a bold move at the time, a country taking ownership of its natural wealth. However, by the early 2000s, under the leadership of Hugo Chavez, Venezuela's oil policies took a more radical turn. Chavez began to exert even more control over foreign oil companies, pushing them out in favor of state-run operations. For years, Venezuela's oil production was a cornerstone of the country's economy. But as global oil prices fluctuated, the nation struggled to keep up with the costs of extraction and maintenance. Now, after decades of turmoil, the country finds itself on the brink of disaster. Venezuela's oil infrastructure is in shambles, and its ability to produce oil has dwindled to a fraction of what it once was. And yet, the question remains, who should control this legacy? Venezuela's people or the powerful forces from abroad? With this complex history in mind, we must consider what comes next and how the world's major powers view Venezuela's oil. The moment the US announced its plan to take control of Venezuela's oil, the global response was swift and intense. For years, China has been Venezuela's largest oil customer, purchasing massive amounts of crude as part of a larger economic alliance. But now, with the US stepping in, China's interests are threatened. The announcement from Trump was a clear signal. Venezuela's oil is no longer just Venezuela's, it's a geopolitical tool. In the midst of this, former Vice President Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as Venezuela's interim president, a move that signaled a shift in power. Trump's bold statement about Venezuela's oil followed soon after. This wasn't just about securing resources. It was a direct challenge to China's influence in the region and a message to Russia, Iran, and Cuba. The US was sending a clear signal. Venezuela's oil would be under American control, and any resistance would be met with force. The stakes have never been higher. But what does this mean for the future of Venezuela's people? And how will global powers respond to this aggressive move? To understand the full impact, we need to look at the mechanics of this shift and how it's reshaping international alliances. At first glance, it might seem like the US is simply taking advantage of Venezuela's collapsing government. But there's more at play beneath the surface. This is a calculated move, one that plays on the complex mechanisms of global oil markets and geopolitics. The US isn't just taking oil from a failed state. It's leveraging the collapse of Venezuela's oil infrastructure to reshape the balance of power in the region. Venezuela's oil is heavy and difficult to refine, making it less ideal for many oil companies. But for American firms like Chevron, this could be an opportunity to rebuild Venezuela's aging oil infrastructure and gain access to the country's massive reserves. The reality is, Venezuela's oil industry needs billions of dollars to be revitalized. US companies have the capital, but the political risk is high. Still, the potential payoff could be enormous if they can navigate the instability and reestablish production. However, even with US investment, it would take years, possibly decades, to restore Venezuela's oil output to its former glory. And that's assuming the political landscape remains stable. With the stakes so high, the question becomes, will these investments pay off, or will the situation in Venezuela continue to spiral out of control? The situation in Venezuela has reached a boiling point. While the US claims it can stabilize the country's oil industry, the reality is much more complex. The second crisis unfolds as the pressure on Venezuela's government intensifies. The country's oil output has already been reduced to a fraction of its former levels, and the few remaining oil fields are barely operational. With the US now making its move, the uncertainty grows. For American oil companies, this is a high-risk venture. They are not only facing the challenges of restoring an aging infrastructure, but they must also navigate the political minefield left by years of corruption, sanctions, and government mismanagement. The Venezuelan people are caught in the middle. While the oil may be sold to the US at market price, the benefits for the average Venezuelan citizen remain unclear. Will this oil windfall trickle down to the people who have suffered through years of economic collapse, or will it simply strengthen the grip of a new, foreign-controlled elite? This is where the second mini-crisis emerges. Can the US truly stabilize Venezuela, or is it simply setting the stage for further chaos and division? To understand the true impact, we must look at the broader consequences of this conflict, not just for Venezuela, but for the world. The people of Venezuela have suffered for years. Hyperinflation, shortages, and a collapsing healthcare system have left millions in poverty. But now, as the US takes control of the country's oil, the question arises, who truly benefits? The promise of oil wealth has always been a double-edged sword for Venezuela. On one hand, the country's vast reserves could provide economic relief. On the other, control of this wealth has often been concentrated in the hands of a few. Now, with the US in charge, the stakes are even higher. Trump's promise to use the oil revenue to benefit both Venezuela and the US sounds appealing on the surface. But history tells us that the benefits of oil wealth rarely trickle down to the people. The real question is, will this oil windfall be used to improve the lives of Venezuelans, or will it once again serve the interests of global powers, leaving ordinary citizens to fend for themselves? As the situation continues to unfold, it's essential to ask, who will control Venezuela's future, and will the people ever see the benefits? To truly understand the global implications, we must now turn our attention to the larger worldwide impact of this oil shift. The ripple effects of Venezuela's oil are being felt far beyond its borders. The US is not the only player in this geopolitical game. China, Russia, and even Iran have long had a vested interest in Venezuela's oil, and now they face a direct challenge to their influence in the region. China, in particular, has poured billions into Venezuela's oil sector, using it as a strategic foothold in Latin America. But with Trump's announcement, that partnership is suddenly at risk. For China, this isn't just about oil, it's about global influence. The US move to seize control of Venezuela's oil supply signals a broader shift in global power dynamics. If the US succeeds, it could have profound consequences for the balance of power in the Western Hemisphere and even beyond. At the same time, the impact on global oil markets is unclear. The short-term effects might be minimal, but in the long run, a shift in Venezuela's oil production could disrupt supply chains and lead to price fluctuations. The world's energy markets are tightly interconnected, and any significant change in one region can have global consequences. So, what comes next? With the future of Venezuela's oil at stake, we must now turn our focus to the possible outcomes and what they mean for the world. The future of Venezuela's oil is uncertain, but there are three possible scenarios that could unfold. Scenario 1, the optimistic path. In this scenario, the U.S. successfully stabilizes Venezuela's oil industry. American oil companies invest heavily in the country's infrastructure, bringing much-needed capital and expertise. Venezuela's oil production gradually increases, helping the nation recover economically. The oil wealth under U.S. control is used to rebuild Venezuela's economy and improve the lives of its citizens. Global oil prices stabilize, and Venezuela becomes a key player in the global energy market once again. Scenario 2, the middle ground. Here, the U.S. faces significant challenges in restoring Venezuela's oil output. The country's oil industry remains in a state of disrepair, and the political landscape is unstable. While some progress is made, it takes years for significant returns. The benefits of the oil revenue are divided, with some reaching the people, but much of it remains tied up in the hands of foreign corporations and political elites. Venezuela's oil wealth, though valuable, is unable to fully address the country's long-standing issues. Scenario 3, the pessimistic path. In the worst-case scenario, Venezuela's oil industry continues to deteriorate. Political instability, corruption, and external pressures prevent any meaningful recovery. The U.S. and other international powers fight over control, while ordinary Venezuelans see little improvement in their lives. The global oil market suffers as Venezuela's oil production falters, leading to increased volatility in prices and a new wave of geopolitical tensions. The future of Venezuela's oil isn't just about resources, it's about the global order, the balance of power, and what happens when nations fight over the most valuable commodity on earth. As we reach the final chapter of this story, one thing becomes clear. The battle for Venezuela's oil is more than just a struggle for resources. It is a fight for control, for power, and for influence on the global stage. The U.S. has made its move, but whether this will lead to stability or further chaos remains to be seen. The world is watching, and the consequences of this intervention will reverberate far beyond Venezuela's borders. Will the U.S. succeed in transforming Venezuela's oil industry into a beacon of hope for the nation, or will this merely be another chapter in the long history of foreign intervention in Latin America? As we look ahead, the answer will depend on the actions of the global powers and the resilience of the Venezuelan people themselves. The world is changing, and so is Venezuela's future. How this story unfolds will shape not just the fate of a nation, but the global energy landscape for years to come. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Stay tuned, because this is a story that's far from over.